Hey everyone, Jordan here. Today we're going to be taking a look at Lian Li's new Lancool 207 case. This is going to come in at £75, so it's around about $90 or so. Really great affordable case. Could be one of the best budget cases we've looked at so far as well. It's also going to be an MATX form factor, but you can fit an ATX board in, so quite curious on how they've done that. Looking forward to checking that out. But let me get it out of the box and we'll take a closer look. This one's got a polystyrene for the packing, but you can't expect really high premium foam on a kind of case at this price point. I think it's more than fair to see polystyrene. There's our manual included. Don't know why they put these in plastic bags. It's just a bit of a waste of plastic, I think. So here we go, the Lancool 207. Oh, a little bit of shock. Not too bad this time. Now this is available in black and white. This one was kindly sent over by Overclockers UK, so I'll link them down below if you do want to check them out if you're in the UK and you want to get one locally. Now, already looking at from the back, I'll just show you this quickly, we'll obviously go around it, but very open back to this. You can see right through to the front, lots of ventilation, and a little bit of a mix or a change, I guess, on how they do the power supply for this one. It's actually going to be installed to the front of the case, leaving the back area open and ventilated for some fresh air to your graphics card. So very cool. We'll obviously show you that as we get inside as well. Let's have a look on the top first. Let's go to the I/O on the front. We've got a Type-C port, two USB Type-A, a power button and a headphone microphone combi jack. Nice to see a USB-C and two Type-A's on a case at this price as well. Very good start. Now for the top panel, again I guess this just pulls off, and it does. Then we've got space there to mount a 360mm AIO. You can obviously do two 140mm fans if you'd prefer. The top panel is one of those fine panels that we've seen before. A lot of NZXT cases have ones like this. The perforation is small enough to catch the dust, but big enough to let air flow through. Really nice mix of the two, and I use one on the daily. It works really well. You can just brush the front off when you've got accumulated dust. Let's go to the front of the case and have a look at what's going on here. So this is going to be another panel we can just pull out. You can easily clean that. Again, it's that small mesh. Then you have two pre-installed 140mm ARGB fans. They've got the kind of infinity effect on those there as well. Then below we've got a solid panel with the Lian Li logo. Just going back to what I mentioned earlier about the form factor being MATX, it's 455mm by 456. So it is certainly smaller, but you can fit ATX like I mentioned. I'll of course show you that when we get in there as well. Not too much going on with the bottom of the case. Looks like there's a couple of hard drive sleds or something. We'll look at those on the other side. Then we have got a dust filter for the power supply. At the front of the case, like I mentioned, it is a little bit of a different style and they've moved things around. So let's now take a look inside and see what they've done. We've got some nice thick tempered glass, looks about 4mm, and looking at it closely I think there's a slight bit of tint to it as well. So into the belly of the case, and I've just got this on a bit of an angle because the ATX board actually sits a little bit lower than the rest of the case. So once you install it, it should probably sit just about flush with the top of the case, but then you still have access for all of your cables to come through. You can either bring them straight through from the right hand side, or you can use the grommets. Nice to see some grommets on the case of this price as well. It's not something you generally see, so good job Lian Li. Then we have a more raised section on the right hand side. We've also got a graphics card support that you can easily adjust. There's three different sizes of support as well. So the first slot is from 285 to 315, the next one is 316 to 345, and then finally 346 to 375mm lengths. That final position at 375mm is the limitation of the case as well, so graphics cards up to that length. And in terms of your air coolers, you can do a maximum height of 180mm. Now, something to bear in mind with the radiator support that I mentioned earlier, you can support the 360, but you do have a maximum depth to use of 70mm. Anything more, you might have some incompatibilities if you're going to use a rear exhaust fan, so just something to bear in mind. The Arctic Freezer AIOs, I believe, are 38mm thick and then 25 for the fan, so that will be too thick for this case. But a standard fan and standard rad should fit without a problem. So just tilting the case here, we can see the pre-installed 120mm fans that will bring the fresh air up to your graphics card. If I just lay this flat and then remove the bottom panel, that's again that nice perforated panel. You'll see where those fans intake the fresh air at the bottom. We also have our accessory box, we'll cover it in a minute. Then on the right hand side, we've got where our power supply will install. Here we have the pass-through for the power supply, so it'll plug in at the back like a traditional case, but then install to the front instead, something like that. Now, because Lian Li are putting the power supply at the front of the case, it also needs to be rotated, so that means you are limited to a maximum of 160mm, but most power supplies you can get really high wattages and smaller form factors now, so it shouldn't be that much of an issue. So other little things to mention, we do have a little pass-through for any cables for your graphics card here. We have our standard 7 expansion bays on the back. No pre-installed rear exhaust fan. I'm going to guess that if you're going to use an AIO, you're going to want it to match the fans that are on that, so I can kind of see why they haven't included one. plus you do already have 4 included, so adding another one would just drive up the price. Now the rear of the case, I did briefly cover this, but a lot of open air for some passive air to escape. So again, the back panel easy to remove just on push pins. Then we have another small perforated area. A little bit less depth here because obviously they're trying to squeeze a lot more into this kind of form factor case, so there's a little bit of a limitation for cable management, but we have a deeper section on the left hand side instead, so that's where the bulk of your cables will go. At the bottom here we have got our 4-pin for the fans that are pre-installed. I guess that's just one cable for both, which is nice and convenient. We've also got our little sled with our accessory box on. So opening this up, we've got all of our screws, motherboard standoffs, the rubber grommets for any hard drives. Also got a few Velcro cable ties, normal cable ties, also some replacement clips if the ones on the side for your side panels get worn out. Really nice to see. Also really nice to see all the accessories in the plastic box with a case of this price point. So again, good job Lian Li. Now that accessory box is off, you can see the little sled that you have for a hard drive or SSD. There's also 2 in there, so you can do 2 hard drives, 2 SSDs, 1 hard drive, 1 SSD, whatever you fancy. They just slot back in at the bottom there and then some screw back. For cable management, we have a couple of clips for like your bigger cables, your EPS ones, to come up and over to the top left of the motherboard. Velcro cable ties for all of the other sections. Let's have a look at what we've got on our front panel. We have a 4-pin header for both of the front fans. Nice that the daisy chain, that's nice and convenient. We have a 3-pin RGB 5V addressable. There's also the Type A header, Type C header. Then we have the front panel all in one header. Really love to see that. If you're wondering about the front panel audio, that's already pre-routed. You just need to undo this little cable tie, and you can bring that up to the bottom left of the motherboard. Underneath the Velcro cable ties, there's also some standard zip tie points as well. And then finally at the bottom, where we're going to mount our power supply. So now we've had a look around the case, I'm going to get my test system in it so I could do some thermal testing. I'll have to do it a little bit differently because obviously we have the pre-installed fans at the bottom as well. So what I'm going to do is test the 140s in the front, add a rear 120 like a traditional case. Then I'll also do some additional testing for the ones at the bottom, and I can talk to you about how it affects the graphics card temps, see if it changes the CPU temps there as well. I can talk to you about my build experience and then give you my overall thoughts. Okay, I've done all my testing with and without the bottom fans, but first let's talk about the build experience. It was surprisingly easy considering this is a smaller form factor yet accommodates the full-size ATX boards. I would recommend you put your PSU in first though, so you can run the EPS connectors up to the top of the board, especially if you're going to use an AIO because there is limited space to do it afterwards. It also can be a little bit fiddly getting the motherboard in place, especially with the recessed panels. Just take your time, especially if this is your first build. The build itself though was really easy. It's really refreshing with the different layout as well. Even though there is a limited amount of cable management room on the back, it was fairly easy to work with. Just something you need to take your time with. I spent a little longer on this case, and I think for a demo it did come out really well. Just have a little spin around so you can see it there. There are also a few little touches that level up the experience. We have a little cutout for the rear exhaust fan cables to go up. They've got their own little channel, which is nice. And then things like for the Velcro cable ties, they have a little 45-degree piece of metal in, so when you pass them through, it pops out really easy. Just things like that that make the build experience a lot more pleasant. And those Velcro cable ties, you can also layer them as well, so you can put cables through them. Also handy if you miss like a loose cable at the end. Now also on the top of the cables, I strongly recommend you get yourself a modular power supply, and also if you're looking to use custom cables and get a full replacement kit for that select power supply over using extensions. There's just enough space for the cables that come with the PSU, let alone room for extensions as well. It'll be an absolute nightmare to try and fit the cables that are the power supply plus the extensions in the limited room. Also, the smaller power supply you can get, the better. 140 would be perfect, and then you can also loop cables down where they connect to that power supply for like the more bulky ones or SATA and things like that that you're only going to use the end of. Also, if you plan to put this on a carpeted floor, the feet aren't that tall, so just double check that there's still airflow getting to the PSU to stop it getting choked off. I'd like the feet to be a little bit taller, especially as with the dust filter, there's not that much space for air to get into the PSU anyway. For EPS cables, they run up and along pretty well actually. It's a bit different having them come across rather than going down like I usually would, but it still does look clean. The clips that they use at the top could be better, or just at least flip them over. They don't really hold anything as they're kind of upwards ones, so at least if they were rotated, they'd at least catch the cables. Also, those clips are the same height as the cutouts as well, so any cables that are going along are visible. Once you do put the back panel on though, it is harder to see them. So let's talk about thermals before we cover some other little bits. The test system is a 5800X3D cooled with the Noctua NHU12A on the Asus TUF X570 Pro 2 We've got 16GB of Kingston Fury Beast DDR4, Solidigm P44 Pro 1TB NVMe. The graphics card is the Asus TUF RTX 3080 powered by an EVGA Platinum 850W power supply. So for testing, all fans are set to 1500 RPM to keep things consistent between cases. As I mentioned, I was going to run the 140s, and then I added a G-Lid Stellar, a basic 120mm RGB fan in the rear for a traditional airflow setup. And I also ran all the tests again with the bottom fans running again at 1500 RPM. Now for the traditional thermal test, I saw a high temperature of 76.6. Moving the ambient gives me a delta of 56 degrees, but in this case on the top of the charts, so the coolest that I've tested yet. I actually had to do a double take as I thought the data was wrong, given the gaps between the cases are usually so small, so miles above any other one that I've tested to date. Now one thing that I didn't realise in the unboxing section of this video is that the front fans on this case are 30mm thick, so that makes sense why the temperatures are so low, because they can move a lot more air than standard thickness fans. So testing the bottom fans, I ran 3D Mark Time Spy in loops to get some heat into the graphics card, then did those tests with and without those fans on. They did have a very positive effect though, with a 2.2 degree reduction on the GPU, also a little bit on the CPU, as it may be some just passive air catching the tower. It is worth mentioning though that that reduction does come with additional noise. These fans aren't quite at high speeds. However, I was using tests that maybe wouldn't push the CPU and GPU as much as if you were just gaming, for example. So they might not ramp up to a speed that you notice in everyday use. A couple of other little things to mention. Some might be a bit concerned with the wider gaps in the back by the bottom intake fans. It would be nice to have a little bit of a dust filter or even the smaller mesh like on the rest of the panels. Also, there's no option to mount 120mm fans in the front if you're thinking about swapping the 140s for any reason. I don't think most people will swap them, but I just thought I'd mention it anyway. Overall though, this is an absolute banger of a case, smaller in size yet takes ATX boards, excellent airflow as you can see, easy to build in as well, just take your time with the cable management, built very well for the price, and oh yeah, it's just 75 quid or $80. I would say that this is my favourite budget case that I've looked at yet. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Of course, if there's anything else you want to know that I haven't covered as well, put that down there and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I'll leave links for this in the description if you want to pick one up. If you enjoyed the video and haven't already, please get subscribed and ding the bell so you don't miss the next video. There is a lot coming up. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to Overclockers UK for sending this out for me to look at, and I'll see you all in the next one.